I know you're probably dying to get stuck into the practical side of all this gel printing, but there really are some key principles to learn up front, and they will just set you up well for your gel printing experience to come. The first thing is what I mentioned in the previous video, is that the layer you put down first will be uppermost in your print. So as we lay on patterns and paint layers, one on top of the other, when we finish, we're looking at the back of the print. If you turn it over, you'll get an idea of what the print will look like. So the principle is what goes down first will be uppermost in your print, and that is something that I will show you in just a minute. The second thing is, which we've already mentioned, is the opacity of paint. So the difference between transparent and opaque. A transparent paint layered down will allow other layers of paint to be seen through. Opaque paint will block any subsequent layers. So if I was to put down a solid opaque white, or like a titanium white or this warm white, that would therefore create an opaque layer first and block any subsequent layers. So it is an important principle to remember. The next thing is that wet pulls, dry doesn't. So whilever things are wet on your plate, you will be able to pull some sort of print off it. Once that dries, you won't be able to pull it. You will need to then wet it either with another layer of acrylic paint or a medium to reactivate the dry layers to lift. So we've got what goes down first will be uppermost in our print. Transparent and opaque paints play different roles in the layering of our paints and mark making and patterns on our gel plate. Wet paint and wet mediums pull, but dry mediums and dry layers don't. Okay. The other thing is that what you see on the plate is mirror image to what will pull. So if I want a panel on, if I'm imagining, for example, this print, and I want a decoration on the left-hand side of my print here, I need to apply it to the right-hand side of my plate. So when I'm laying that down on the right side of the plate, that will print on the left side. That is a principle that does take a little bit of getting used to. So, mirror image on the plate. And the last principle I just want to talk about before we have a play is the idea of addition and subtraction. So with wet paint, you will be able to subtract and then add, and a lot of gel printing is a mixture of adding paint down on the plate but then also lifting it up again. So let's give it a go, and I'm going to start a little exercise which is addition and subtraction. I'm going to put paint on 2/3 of the gel plate, and leave a panel there, and I'm going to show you how addition and subtraction works. I'm going to use some just little random natural shaped homemade mark making tools, and I will also have a play with these commercially bought stamps. So we're going to see how we go. And I'm going to blend this first layer. It's going to be a little bit of golden turquoise phthalo. And I'm going to lighten it a bit. It might be a bit streaky, but I'm going to use warm white in the Jo Sonia. Now, one is transparent and one is opaque. So I imagine it'll come out as semi-opaque, but I also want this particular layer just slightly lighter in colour than the next layer I'm going to use. So I am not blending those colours on my plate. I'm just going to give them a little swirl there and then put them on the plate like that. And I'm going to use my wet one to just clean off my palette knife. And wet ones are very handy to have at the side. So I want this to be streaky, and I'm just going to put it on 2/3 of the plate. Look at that vibrant colour. And I'm not worrying about making it all even there. And I'm keeping it quite wet for now, rubbing that off there. And this is where I'm showing you addition and subtraction. So we've got our colour down there. I'm going to stamp this in. And we've subtracted it from there. It's now on my stamp, and I'm going to add it there. So subtraction, addition. And I will do another few marks here to subtract, and I will add these up here. Okay, addition and subtraction. And so I'm going to now use this to, and it's sort of a good idea to use either non-porous so that the colour will be absorbed into some of these marks. These mark making. So this will probably have to be seasoned a bit. It's just making very light marks. So there we go. We're lifting off the subtraction and we're adding it. It's very soft, but it is adding there a little bit. That's where seasoning that. So I'm just going to ink that up a little bit more, give it a bit more oomph in some of these marks. It's not, there we go, a bit more paint there. I'm just reinforcing that a bit more. Okay. Now we've got that, and I might do some corrugated cardboard lines. Subtraction. And hopefully, again, it's not too porous. Yeah, it's not taking that paint too well. I'll just ink that up a bit more there and lay that down there. So very subtle, but I'm going to pull that print. I don't think anything on that side will pull because it's quite dry, but I want to pull some of this on this side. And I don't want to pull it all because I want to leave some for the next layer. So a little gentle massage, taking off some. Obviously started to dry around the edge, but that's sort of what I was wanting. I'm going to add another colour into that now. So that's my first print where we've subtracted paint from that first layer. I'll pop that to the side and I will clean up a few, wash my roller, and then we'll look at putting some more marks down. While I'm washing my roller and that's drying, you can just use a wet one to clean up some of these stamps. Some it matters, others it doesn't. Clearly, it doesn't matter if they build up a bit of paint on them, but certainly some of these commercial stamps, it's nice to just wipe them over a bit. The next layer I'm going to do is in a dark blue as a contrast. So I'm just going to make some extra marks on there. I'm using Jo Sonja's Storm Blue, and it's an opaque. So it doesn't matter that I'm using that same patch of my palette. And I'm just going to use this now as a bit of a stamp pad here. And I'll go back into this one because the lines on this didn't print overly well, so I'll reinforce them with the dark blue. I'll leave those as they are. Add another little bit in there. And I'm going to keep working that, and then I'm going to get this stamp, stamp that I love. I'll pop that in there, and some of these need to be seasoned a bit. They don't necessarily, work. You've just got to, season them a bit to get them activated. And so now I'm subtracting from there really and adding onto here. And it's important to try and keep your images straight. I do love this stamp. And I tend to like working in threes and having some things coming off the page. So I didn't, or off the gel plate. I didn't worry about including it all there. So I've got 3 there. They're quite bold. What I can do, if I felt that they were a bit too dark and bold, I can knock them back a bit with just a bit of scrunch tissue. And I do tend to like, not necessarily having everything perfect. I prefer imperfection, and this just knocks it back a bit, not quite so strong. So I could now come in with the same colour, another colour. I think I'll pull it with cream. So what I'm going to do is get my Australian Ghost Gum. I'm going to wash that one. You're just see me working here, and as I said in an earlier lesson, really just going with the flow as ideas come to mind. So I'll wash my roller, and I'm going to do some marks in a Australian Ghost Gum, or brown, not quite sure. I think maybe just the Ghost Gum, and that will soften this bright blue as well. And I might do that with just these little dots. So again, it'll be just a matter of applying some of the paint to the dots and stamping that on. So now I'm going to work with Australian Ghost Gum. It's a Matisse and it's opaque, and I have swapped out my palette because I didn't want to get any dark blue into this cream, and I'm just going to put it on there because I wasn't sure how much was in the tube, but I'm just going to roll it onto that 2/3 section and show you again that principle of addition and subtraction. I do want this to be quite a generous layer because I want to be able to keep that wet for a while longer. And I'll try and line it up, not that that matters too much. So this is another layer on top. It's going to sort of muddy that blue a bit. Wipe that off, and this is where I'm going to hopefully, I'll just try and season that a bit. Let's see how we go. So stamping into, but I don't want, you know, the lines to be too even. So I've got lifting up there, subtracting and adding. Subtracting, adding, and just holding it up because I just don't want, you know, straight lines on everything. Okay, so we've got our dots, we've laid them down, we're working on our addition and subtracting. I'm going to let that dry, and now that we've got those 3 layers, so we've got the turquoise with the cream. So our first layer was a blend of turquoise, golden turquoise and warm white. Then we went in with some pattern making on the storm blue. Then we've put down a layer of Australian ghost gum on that side. That's quite thick. I wanted it quite thick so that it would really show you the difference between subtracting and adding across the plate. You can try that in various ways. Now I'm going to let that dry, and we're going to pull the print with a titanium white. So cleaning our supplies, and then I'll come back once that's dry. I'll get the hairdryer onto that and we'll pull the print. So my tools are now dry and clean. Let's have a look at what the print is hopefully going to look like if it all comes off in one go. So you can see the 3 different colour layers. It'll be interesting to see whether that Australian ghost gum is very obvious on paper. So you're going to have just very subtle cream dots there. Whether the white is going to be enough of a contrast will be interesting to see. So I'm going to use Atelier in a titanium white to pull this print. So as we talked about in our basic principles, dry does not pull. So I cannot lay a substrate onto that and pull it. What I need is to apply a wet medium, and that could be either a medium like a matte medium or a matte gel, or an acrylic paint. And in this case I'm going to use white and pull the print. So that white, that wet layer, then activates the dry layer to lift. So wet pulls, dry doesn't. Okay, so let's put on our titanium white, which was a nice opaque white. Rolling it across the full plate, working it in, making sure it's nice and even. Where if you don't put down a good layer of paint, it's not going to lift the print. As I said, the wet, where it's wet, it will activate those dry layers, and there's no guarantees the whole print is going to come off. But that's the beauty of gel printing, and I'm just going to catch that edge and then roll it and apply that pressure to make sure there's good contact, that there's no air bubbles. Putting my roller in my bucket of water and giving that a good massage. And now we're going to dry that layer. If I tried to lift that, yes you can, and many people do, but I prefer to dry that layer to increase the adhesion with the substrate. Now if you choose not to use a hairdryer, you can just wait and let it air dry. You can put it under weight, so put a couple of heavier books on it to make sure there's good contact, and there are times when that is the preferred method. But with this one, I'm just going to put a little bit of hairdryer on it. Another thing to note in your choice of substrate and when you lay it on wet paint is that sometimes if it's not good quality substrate, so with tissue, because it's thin, mainly the thin papers, so this just copy paper, tissue paper, can expand when it's in contact with the wet layer underneath. So sometimes it will shrink back when it is dry, but sometimes it doesn't. So that is now feeling dry, and we'll see how we go with our pool. It's quite bright, but it's coming off the plate well, and just pulling it from that top edge and keeping the pressure quite even. I'm holding the plate here because there can be quite a bit of resistance in pulling this off. So it's not necessarily the most beautiful print, but the idea is to show you a couple of principles. The idea of subtraction and addition. The principle of mirror image, so what you're laying down on the right becomes on the left of your print. What goes down first, so you can see that this turquoise and warm white layer is actually uppermost above our pretty little patterns here. And then the next layer down is the storm blue, and then we added the Australian ghost gum and stamped into that and laid that there. So you can see the ghost gum there, okay. So that shows you, and also the whole idea of when a layer is dry, it will not lift off the gel plate. You need to either pull when it's wet or apply a wet layer of medium or paint to the plate. That's a very basic, simple pattern, but let me just show you some prints I've done previously, and these all, you know, are using similar patterns and stamps, but the layers are worked really advanced. Lots and lots of layers, rolling on paint, adding, subtracting. These are just some that I did on my 6x6 gel plate. These were done quite a while ago. So stamping into, lifting off, addition and subtraction. You know, it doesn't always pull, but that's okay. I think sometimes these rough edges and where the print doesn't lift is also beautiful. And so they're just a couple of examples of how you can use this addition and subtraction principle. So basic, but so important in your gel printing.